Good morning, friends and family, for our Monday, August 19th, 2019 devotions in our Walking with Jesus time together. Today's story comes from Matthew chapter 15, verses 21 to 28, and Mark chapter 7, verses 24 through 30, and it's the story of Jesus healing a Gentile's daughter. So, let's go. Matthew 15, 21 to 28. Then Jesus left Galilee and went north to the region of Tyre and Sidon. A Gentile woman who lived there came to him, pleading, "Have mercy on me, O Lord, Son of David, for my daughter is possessed by a demon that torments her severely." But Jesus gave her no reply, not even a word. Then his disciples urged him to send her away. "Tell her to go away," they said. "She is bothering us with all her begging." Then Jesus said to the woman, "I was sent only to help God's lost sheep, the people of Israel." But she came and worshipped him, pleading again, "Lord, help me." Jesus responded, It isn't right to take food from the children and throw it to the dogs." She replied, "That's true, Lord, but even dogs are allowed to eat the scraps that fall beneath their master's table." "Dear woman," Jesus said to her, "your faith is great, your request is granted." And her daughter was instantly healed. And then Mark 7, 24 through 30. Then Jesus left Galilee and went north to the region of Tyre. He didn't want anyone to know which house he was staying in, but he couldn't keep it secret. Right away, a woman who had heard about him came and fell at his feet. Her little girl was possessed by an evil spirit, and she begged him to cast out the demon from her daughter. Since she was a Gentile, born in Syrian Phoenicia, Jesus told her, "First I should feed the children, my own family, the Jews. It isn't right to take food from the children and throw it to the dogs." She replied, "That's true, Lord, but even the dogs under the table are allowed to eat the scraps from the children's plates." "Good answer," he said. "Now go home, for the demon has left your daughter." And when she arrived home, she found her little girl lying quietly in bed, and the demon was gone. I have to say that this story is one that has plagued me for years. While I believe Jesus was fully human, and I even like to see Jesus as just one of the guys who's cutting up and having fun and probably has practical jokes and inside jokes with the disciples, I have to admit that I struggle with this, where Jesus is calling this woman and her people dogs. And I know that there was a lot of, well, for lack of a better term, racism in the cultures of the world at this point in time. And yet, I hope, my interpretation of this is that Jesus is testing her. Are you sure that you really want to associate with a Jew when you are not living amongst the Jews and you're a Syro-Phoenician woman? This is not your people. This is not your culture. I'm not your God. But she continues to worship him. And therefore God grants her request. Jesus heals her daughter. Sometimes I think we have to push through the hard things of this life, and we have to acknowledge the fact that things are not always as rosy as they appear. Our world is still very messed up. There's still a lot of evil in the world and a lot of racism and hatred. And yet those things have no place in the body of Christ. And in fact, those things can thwart Jesus' ability to do the miraculous. For this story, it's doubly compound. You have an evil spirit and a healing that needs to take place. And yet there's a cross-cultural, cross-racial boundary that has to be broken. And in the midst of that, God does the miraculous. I hope and pray that in my lifetime, I can see a country where we get along so much better than what we do now. I know that it might seem a little silly to say that, but I hope and pray that that's the case. We need to understand God created us all in his image. And God longs to move amongst all of us to bring him glory. No one is better than anyone else. No one is worse than anyone else. In fact, I'm wrestling with a theory that says the reason why God chose Israel was not because they were his chosen people in that they were better than everyone, but also he chose them because he knew that they were going to be covenant breakers, that in many ways they were going to be worse than most of the other nations. And as we read the Old Testament, we find out they were far worse in many ways than a lot of the other nations. And so if God can move through a people who are evil and unkind and unloving, and God can bring forth redemption for them, then God can definitely bring redemption for us. I hope and pray that you're moving towards that holy living that God is calling you to. I hope and pray that you're looking at yourself and breaking down the barriers that you need to break down so that God can move in your life as well. Have a blessed morning.